Most leaders look at performance charts every week. Far fewer know whether those charts actually tell them when to act. That is the problem control charts solve. They help leaders separate signal from noise, stop reacting to every swing in the numbers, and see whether the system itself needs improvement. Without that discipline, leaders can spend months reacting to fluctuations that mean very little, while missing the patterns that actually call for action. Control charts are often misunderstood as a technical quality tool, something for specialists far from leadership. W. Edwards Deming saw them as a practical management method. A control chart does not simply show data over time. It shows whether the pattern in the data belongs to the system's normal operation or whether something unusual has happened that deserves investigation. That distinction matters because it tells leadership what kind of action fits what the process is showing. If the chart shows a special cause, leaders should look for what changed. If the chart shows a stable but disappointing system, leaders should improve the system itself. In other words, the chart helps leaders decide whether they are looking at a signal to investigate or a system to redesign. Deming put it plainly. The control chart is the process talking to us. On Monday morning, St. Anne's Hospital was back in its usual rhythm of executive concern. Emergency department boarding times had risen again. Elena had a spreadsheet open in front of her, and frustration all over her face.
Every week it moves. One unit improves, another slips. We keep holding review meetings and nothing sticks.
Beside her sat Marcus, the vice president of operations. He had heard this tone before. A bad week created urgency. A better week brought relief.
I want each unit leader in here this afternoon. If a floor is holding patients too long, I want to know why. And I want targets by Friday.
Before we do that, let me show you something.
Marcus slid over a different report. It was not the usual dashboard. He had plotted 6 months of emergency department boarding times on a control chart. Beside it, he had done the same for discharge completion before noon.
So, what am I looking at?
Not just a trend line. This chart tells us whether we're looking at the normal voice of the system or a signal that something unusual happened. Most of these points are inside the limits, and there is no unusual pattern. That means the process is stable, even though the performance isn't good enough. But these 2 points break the pattern. Those are signals.
Elena leaned in. The weekly swings that had felt dramatic now looked less like separate stories and more like one repeating system, interrupted twice.
What caused the 2 signals?
One was the week the telemetry unit lost beds because of a plumbing failure. The other was the cyber attack drill that slowed admissions and discharge orders. Those are special causes. But the rest of the chart is telling us something else. This is the process telling us that our boarding problem is built into the way the hospital is operating right now. If we demand explanations for one bad Tuesday, we're just reacting to noise.
Stable did not mean acceptable. It meant predictable under current conditions. The chart did not excuse the delays. It clarified the kind of action required. Elena was no longer looking at a mystery that changed every week. She was looking at a stable system, interrupted twice.
So the chart is telling us 2 things at once. Chase the signals, improve the system.
Exactly. The chart keeps us from confusing those jobs.
That afternoon's meeting changed shape. Elena canceled the ranking discussion. Instead, she asked for a review of the 2 special cause events and a separate cross-functional look at bed management, discharge timing, transport delays, and nursing handoffs. Weeks later, the hospital was still measuring the same outcomes. But now, control charts were part of the management conversation. Genuine disruptions were investigated faster. Chronic system problems became easier to name. That is what control charts do. They help leaders hear the process before they react to it. If you lead an organization, start by changing what you expect a chart to do. A control chart is not decoration for a dashboard. It is a method for deciding whether a result belongs to the system or points to a specific unusual cause. That distinction matters because it protects leaders from two common mistakes. One is reacting to ordinary variation as if every rise or drop demands intervention. The other is missing a true signal because we assume it is just another fluctuation. Control charts make both mistakes less likely because they tie data to a rule for action. The chart is useful not because it looks precise, but because it tells leadership what kind of response fits what the process is showing. When the chart shows a special cause, investigate what changed and remove it if it can recur. When the chart shows a stable but unsatisfactory process, stop blaming one-off problems and improve the design of the work. Over time, that kind of use of data creates more dependable performance, lower waste, and stronger trust. Control charts matter because they teach leaders how to listen. They show when a process is signaling for investigation and when it is simply revealing the limits of the current system. That is a profound shift in management. Instead of reacting to every number, we learn to ask what the chart is telling us and what kind of action makes sense. When leaders do that consistently, work becomes calmer, learning becomes faster, and improvement becomes more tangible. That is why control charts are not a narrow technical tool. They are a practical way to hear the process, improve the system, and lead with clarity.